Well, good morning. My name is Matt, and I'm the VP of Kanban here at TopLeft, and I want to welcome you all to the webinar. This is expected to be half an hour to 45 minutes. We'll see how many questions you have. Thanks for attending. We're going to talk about the 7 wastes in Kanban, and then give you some announcements from TopLeft. We have some exciting stuff coming that we are excited to tell you about. So let's get into this. So you probably come here already knowing about Kanban boards. You know, columns. You see your work arrayed on the Kanban board, and your work moves across the board, left to right, to represent how far it is through your pipeline. That's a Kanban board, and most people know that. But you might not know that Kanban actually talks a lot more about more than just visualizing your work on a Kanban board. It talks about a variety of things, efficiency and waste. So we're going to talk about waste and what Kanban has to say about waste in terms of specifically MSPs. By the way, if you don't know this, TopLeft comes from an MSP. We actually built out TopLeft Kanban boards because we were an MSP and using ConnectWise, and we needed those better visualizations for ourselves. So we know a few things about how MSPs tend to waste effort. But you may or may not know, Kanban comes out of a manufacturing background. So in manufacturing, you're building widgets, whatever. It's easy. It's a little bit more easy to see waste. Either you got some material sitting on the ground or in the garbage can or whatever, or you see things moving about in your factory where maybe they don't. It's more movement than it really needs to be. So it's maybe a little bit more obvious in manufacturing, but in manufacturing, so they came up with a framework and basically a list of 7 different ways to waste effort. But you know what? It applies to knowledge jobs and MSPs too. So I have some specific ideas about things that happen in MSPs that are wasteful. So first, I want to just make sure that we have a good idea of what is waste. And yeah, so that we can talk about that. Think about it. Here's a simple way that I thought about it. Light bulbs. Okay, you know what those are. You got the incandescent light bulb there on the left, and the LED ones, which everybody uses now, on the right. And what's kind of the biggest difference between them? Well, they give off the same light. They plug into the same socket, but the one on the left, it gets so hot that you can't touch it. So there's a lot of energy going in that's not doing something useful, because light bulbs are for light, not for heat, right? So the one on the left, 60-watt bulb, could be giving off 55 watts of heat. That's waste, because the purpose of a light bulb is not for heat, but that's what you get anyway. Whereas the one on the right, the LED bulb, much more efficient, because you get, just making up numbers here, 5 watts of light and 1 watt of heat, something like that. So that's why the LED bulb is much more efficient. The other one's so much more wasteful, is because considering the purpose of what the light bulb is for, what's the energy actually going into? And so we can think about that. In terms of MSPs, we need to think what's the purpose of what we're doing? Well, it always comes down to what the customer thinks about. In all the work that we do, except we also do, some internal things. Of course, MSPs always have some internal work to do, but substantially, we're going to be thinking about what does the customer want, and how much of our effort is going directly into giving them that value, and what things are we doing that the customer can't see and doesn't directly impact the customer. So that's the sort of thing that we're going to be thinking about here. So this is and a lot of things that I'm going to say, this kind of an art, not a science. Okay, so don't go to your boss and say, TopLeft says we can never do this, and then implement that and find out it's not the right thing, because you really got to think about what is the right thing for you in your environment. So these aren't rigid. You can't eliminate all waste. Some of it's going to be inevitable. Sometimes in thinking of your options, you need to choose between a few different options and find the least wasteful one. If something is waste, really depends a lot on the specific situation, because that varies between companies, customers, different processes in your organization. And also, like the ideas I have here are by no means a complete list. This is just some ideas that I had. And by the way, if you have other ideas, please do go ahead and toss them in the chat in here in Zoom, and we can share with each other. Um, and I do have a list of some other resources I'll get to at the end here. Okay, so the first way, actually, let me go list them first. So the 7 wastes. So transport, moving items from one place to another when it doesn't directly help the customer. Okay, inventory, holding more items than necessary at one time in case they're needed in the future. Motion, movements that are complicated or unnecessary. Waiting, items that are unfinished because there's no person or resource available to perform the work. Overproduction, creating more of an item than your customer needs. Overprocessing, doing more work on an item than the customer needs. And finally, defects, okay, faults in an item that need to be corrected before delivering it to the customer. So those are the 7 Kanban wastes, okay? So now let's go into that in a lot more detail. So starting with transport. So just, I have some examples that I just kind of made up from manufacturing. Because I think that can make it a little bit, once we see an example of that with things you can actually touch and feel, then it makes the other ones make a bit more sense. So, if you're a manufacturer, transport waste is moving widgets between production lines in multiple buildings on campus without a really good reason for doing that. Yeah, and this kind of, to give you an example, there could be good reasons to do that, to have multiple buildings on campus. Maybe that's still maybe there are still that gives you some benefits, so as an expert in your field, you need to decide if that's worthwhile to do. But here we're just saying, maybe there's not a good reason. Maybe there used to be a good reason, but we changed something and now that reason is gone. Maybe we do need to change this to be less wasteful. So that's an example of why this sometimes it's a waste, sometimes it's not. So in your help desk environment, what does that look like? Well, it could be like starting a ticket with insufficient information. So that results in you have multiple back and forth between the technician and the customer. That's transport waste. You could improve that by using forms for common types of requests to mean that when someone asks for a new user account and something, then you don't end up you have a less likely chance of going back and forth a whole bunch. Okay, so use some standard forms for standard types of requests. That's an example. For project, all client communications going through the project manager. That's information. Maybe it doesn't need to do that all the time. If you don't need to do that all the time, then don't do that. Improve it by making sure that your engineers and your customers can communicate directly. That's going to, something like that's going to require some training for the customers, training for the engineers, so that they are always giving the customers the information they need when they need it. Inventory waste, okay, holding more items than necessary. So in manufacturing, maybe you've got some parts that you can reorder with only a few in only just a few days, but you're still holding 4 weeks worth of them for your manufacturing pipeline. So that would be waste, inventory waste, because you're holding more than you really need to. So help desk, sometimes help desks hold on to repair parts. So actually a physical thing. Maybe they're rarely used though. You can improve this by making some effort to reduce the time it takes you to order parts. It could be getting in a relationship with a new vendor who ships faster, or just depending on the store down the street, because they keep stuff in stock. Um, or for parts that are hard to find, you can maybe push that to the actual customer, so that it's not really your responsibility. Maybe you're still responsible for making sure that that's arranged for them, but you don't need to kind of hold that in your own inventory if it's hard to find parts. For projects, typically not so much actually like physical parts. We're talking about work again, but for example, project tickets that won't be done in the next 3 months. That's inventory. If you're thinking that far ahead, it would probably be better if you just didn't think that far ahead. Um, focus on the stuff that is going to actually get done closer, because that list of work that you want to do, but not for a long time, that's inventory. So just don't do that. Obviously, that's going to require some improvements in certain other parts of your workflows so that you don't do that. Okay, motion, movements that are complicated or unnecessary. So in manufacturing, maybe somebody's working on a part and there's multiple at a single workstation, and they're going between different tools all the time. They pick up the same tool 3 or 4 times when maybe they could just do it. Use that tool once. Maybe sharing tools between multiple workers because you don't have enough. Okay, so they're always walking back and forth to the tool bench. So in help desk and actually project here, these, in my opinion, are similar. Um, what's the motion waste? Well, technicians switching between multiple tickets at one time. That's always going to be waste because you always forget. You kind of have this context switching when you're switching between multiple things at once. You're going to be more efficient if you don't do that. So improve by emphasizing finishing tickets instead of starting tickets. So you're, generally speaking, working on one ticket at a time. It's motion waste to organize all of a technician's work in a calendar, which is kind of, if you follow what ConnectWise recommends, that they have a name for this, paint your calendar green. And that is one of the things that they teach, but it's a lot of motion waste because if you're putting it into calendars solely for the purpose of organizing the work, well, you know what? Your customer doesn't get any value out of that. They don't care about that as far as it goes in just organizing your work. So that's waste. You can get rid of all that work by just prioritizing the work items and not scheduling them. It could be motion waste to regularly shift individual tickets between multiple technicians. So every time a ticket moves from one tech to another, it's a bit of motion. If you can avoid it, then you reduce that waste. Waiting, items that are unfinished because there's no person or resource available to perform the work right now. Meaning, in MSP terms, we're thinking of things that are not like waiting on the customer. So if you do have to go back to the customer to get some information, it's waiting, but it's not waiting on you. So it doesn't really apply. Anyway, in manufacturing, a queue of widgets piling up in front of a machine. Maybe you only got one of these really expensive machines, and sometimes work piles up in front of that because the machine isn't fast enough or you don't have enough. That's waiting. In help desk and also in project, waiting work is tickets that are assigned to a technician. Even whether or not they've been started, work that's been started and currently isn't in progress. Well, that's worse waiting, but it is also waiting work, even if they haven't started it yet. So you want to minimize that. Now, keep in mind, it's healthy to have small queues of work. So a technician should always have at least one thing waiting on them, because then when they finish what they're working on, then they still have there's something that they can start on immediately. You actually do want to avoid the case where you have no queue at all, because then the technician's going to finish their work and they're going to be like, what do I do? They're going to go have to think about that. So it is healthy to have small queues, and the main thing you want to avoid is getting really long queues of work, because then things spend a lot of time waiting, and that's obviously that impacts what your customers think about your service. The waste of overproduction. That's creating more of an item than your customer needs. So manufacturing, maybe you manufactured too many widgets because of the need to keep stock. Uh, rather than just manufacturing them on demand. So if you can manufacture things really quickly, then you don't have to overproduce and keep an inventory of the finished stuff, because you can just do it when someone orders. So for help desk, overproduction could be something like failing to interpret the customer's needs and doing what they ask for. Okay, so we all know that sometimes customers will phrase a request and they'll say, they'll tell you what they want, but as a professional, sometimes you need to look a little bit deeper and understand what it is that they need, uh, and maybe you give them something that's not exactly what they ask for, but it is actually what they need. So we want to basically, if what they ask for is complicated, but what you think they need is really simple, then doing what they ask for is overproduction. So the assumption is that you're a professional and you have a minimum kind of understanding of what your customer actually needs, because obviously you don't want to just go and assume things. But so that's kind of the assumption, is that you're good at seeing what the customer actually needs. Another example would be writing SOPs and filling out forms that nobody actually uses. So an example here is that some companies have really strict triage procedures, and you got to fill out type, subtype, item, and other things like that. But if no one actually uses those fields in the future after you've filled them out, then that's overproduction waste, because no one's getting any value out of that. So, if you find yourself doing work and wondering, does anybody actually use this in the future? Then that could be overproduction work, and it would be better to just not do that. You can always, decide, if you decide you do want to do some reporting on, the most common types and subtypes and things like that using that example, well, then go ahead and start tracking that. Run those reports, and then you are getting a benefit out of it, and it's not overproduction anymore. For projects, overproduction would be doing detailed planning of project work. That's for stuff that's way out in the future. Um, so that's not too hard to fix, really. You just think of like, what stuff can I do in the next couple of weeks, maybe. The exact time frame could change, for different groups, but a couple of weeks is usually good. You do want good detailed plans for the next few weeks. But for stuff past that, it's better to just really do only rough planning, because everybody's seen this case where you do a bunch of really detailed planning, but it's for stuff that's not going to happen for 3 months. And then by the time you get there, there's enough other stuff in the project that's changed, and all of your detailed planning is no good anymore, because certain assumptions have changed, or certain business requirements have changed, or whatever. And so all that work you did was wasted. It was overproduction. So just keep that in mind. Detailed work for the next couple of weeks, and rough work for anything beyond that. Over processing. That's doing more work on an item than the customer needs. So manufacturing, maybe you make the widgets which with features the customer rarely uses, or maybe it's a really high quality product, but you're selling it to people who don't actually care about that quality. So that would be over processing. In help desk, and also project. So that would be things like doing more investigation or fixing of an issue than is really necessary to solve the immediate problem and the root cause. I don't want to suggest that anybody only ever fixes the immediate problem and never goes on to fix the root cause. Like, we do want to fix the root cause to prevent this sort of these things from happening again. But we just need to be aware of the amount of work that we're putting into that. Because if you do more than what the customer is going to value, either in fixing it this time, and as also fixing it in the future by fixing the root cause, that is over processing. Also, things like just responding to a ticket in more detail than the customer really is going to understand and benefit. Um, so that, as computer experts, is frequently a tendency of ours, right? To um, uh, try to explain things in terms that the customers, they're not going to understand. They're not going to, they don't know the difference. They don't know what we're talking about. And so to explain it in the level of detail more than they really understand, that's over processing. It doesn't benefit them. In fact, it can confuse them even. So got to make sure that we're always doing that at the right level of detail. Okay, the last Kanban waste is defects. It's probably the most easy to understand one. In manufacturing, your widgets are assembled incorrectly. They're missing bits, scratches, broken parts. Or it could also be widgets that are built totally correctly, but not according to the order. Okay, so there was not a fault in the assembly. There was a fault in the ordering or preparing to build that an otherwise correct widget. So in help desk, same things. Could be misunderstanding that whatever it is that the customer reported, so that we don't we fix something, but it still doesn't solve the customer what they need. Um, Fixing the problem partially, or not at all, because we either because we misunderstood it, or um, we just got it wrong. We thought we were doing the right thing, but we didn't check carefully, and it turns out that it's not fixed. Or there can always be a situation where it looks fixed to us, but it's the customer, network problems, things like that. Maybe it's difficult for us to really duplicate the customer's exact situation, so it looks like it's fixed to us, but from the customer's perspective, it's not. That's a defect. Failing to help the customer understand when the problem is fixed. So if you fix the problem but you don't tell them, that's a defect. Even failure to follow our own processes, like failure to triage according to our process. Well, it could mean that an urgent ticket is not handled urgently. Okay, so that would be a defect in the triage acting on the triage process. Dispatching to the wrong technician, okay, that would be another defect. And by that I mean, by wrong technician, I mean like sending work to somebody when we know that this person is not trained on that technology or whatever. You know, they have no chance to really fix that, so it's going to have to go back and get redispatched again. Project substantially the same, you know, misunderstanding things, bad communication, but also because project work, you know, we plan out this ticket scope, then a defect could be in the ticket scope, meaning, you know, it's unclear. It's leading to either under engineering, over engineering, and not delivering what the customer really needs. Okay, so that's it. Let me just check. I didn't have my chat window. Let's see if we have. Someone said double handling. Yeah. So I forget what that was. Chris, you said double handling, but I didn't see when it came in, so I can't be sure which one, which waste that was part of. You know, it could be defect because that would be, you know, a problem in the dispatch. Yeah, the second one you said. Okay, so which one was that? That was yeah, inventory. Yeah. Okay. Good. So thanks for yeah, contributing there. Okay, and that's it. You want to read a bit more? Here's some resources. I will post. So we're going to post the recording on our YouTube channel. You'll all get a link to the video, and I'll post a link to this presentation in the YouTube video, and so then you can get at these. Anyways, there's some good resources here from Kanbanize, Kanban Zone, and this link. So if you want to do some more reading, that's some good stuff there. Okay, announcements and updates. We've got some exciting stuff here. Okay, so one announcement is we have hired our third developer. So we had two, now we have three, 50% increase. So we expect to see us delivering more features and more good stuff. We certainly have a lot in our roadmap. The developer's name is Daniel Huang, so we welcome him. We have a couple new filters available to help you identify exactly which tickets and projects that you want to see in your boards for auto task mode. So if the filters are for the department for tickets, actually ticket and task boards for auto task, we're looking at the resources default department. So you're looking at the who the tickets are assigned to and their default department. So it makes it easier to say, I want to see tickets for any tickets that are assigned to anybody in a certain department. Is a lot easier now with those filters available for AutoTask. Also, for boards that show the projects, you can filter on the department that a project is assigned to. So if you want to show the projects that are assigned to certain departments, now you can do that with those filters available in AutoTask. Those are available for everyone already. Now, a couple of things that are coming up very soon, like super soon. Like we're pushing the update out to everybody's environment as we speak is a big one. Custom fields. Okay, so people have asked for this for a long time, so we're happy to make this available now. It's both for ConnectWise and AutoTask. Custom fields is kind of the ConnectWise terminology, and then UDFs, user-defined fields, is what AutoTask calls them. So now you can do things like define custom fields for tickets, and now you can see this on the card. So here's an example. Here this one happens to be like a Boolean, a checkbox here, extra priority ticket, something we made up here, and it's true, it's checked here. For this one, it's not checked, so you can see that there. We also support like numeric fields and text fields. So the label will be there, and then the value that you give to that ticket. Also, ConnectWise does a bit more in terms of telling us what type of field it is. So you can do things like links. So you can put in a URL as a custom field, and it'll actually be a link on the ticket here. That's something Autotask doesn't offer us. So it would just be text here. But this is really cool. So there's a lot that you can do with this. Swim lanes. We also offer it for swim lanes. You can see how you can select it there, and that's very useful to be able to group the tickets by the value of these custom fields. So that would be typically used, especially if you've set up a custom field in Autotask or ConnectWise, and you got to select the value because there's only 5 or 6 valid values, something like that. Or if it's a radio field, meaning you select one, something like that. So that would be a typical use for a swim lane. We haven't added support for numeric fields, right? Just yet, mostly because we're just trying to keep it simple, and we're not sure if that's super useful. But if you say, hey, here's a use case I could really use numeric fields, then let us know, because we can add that. So we're really excited about this. I'll give you some information about what we're planning out for further in the future, kind of 1 or 2 quarters from now, is that we we expect to start issuing multiple plans. Because right now, basically, there's one plan that you sign up for and you choose the number of licenses. But we are adding some new features, planning to add features, and they may be part of more expensive plans. Now, I can't commit to anything, but it's possible that the UDFs here, that would be part of a more expensive plan. But if you actually go out and use them now, I'm just not committing to this, I'm just saying it's possible. It is possible that we might just grandfather you into that if you're actually using them. So you could keep the kind of the middle plan. That's probably what everybody would be at by default with the current functionality. We might allow you to continue using that even at the medium plan, even if the UDFs end up as part of the more expensive plan. So that would be a good reason to use them now. Just giving you a heads up. Second big thing. This is really exciting too, because it solves some headaches that ConnectWise customers have had for a while. So member impersonation. So that's kind of the technical term, but what this means is, and this is coming super soon. In fact, I think I just saw the announcement in our Slack channel that our build server has finished building the first version of this, which means that we can get it out to you today or tomorrow. What this means is that you can, as your own ConnectWise account, you can go in and you can do the process to get API keys that aren't associated with your server as a whole. They're actually just associated with you. They are your keys, and then you can give us those keys, and then we can make changes. When you make changes in Kanban, drag a ticket to a different column so we change the status or enter time or whatever. Then we can make that change, and ConnectWise will say it's you that made the change, as opposed to what we've always done, which is saying that Kanban has made the change. So in the audit trail, that will look like the difference of this. So all of these changes came through Kanban, but these changes were made using our Kanban-wide API member. So they're not really attributed properly. And these ones were made using that API, the user API member. And so these are attributed properly to Joseph when he, no, we see that Peter assigned Joseph. So it's being properly attributed to Peter doing that. And so that cleans up the audit trail like this, makes that a lot more clear. It also fixes some problems with the time entry notes that go out to the customers. So when you make a time entry and you send the notes to a customer, previously it would say the Kanban API member made this time entry, and that would go out to your customer. So some folks were finding that confusing, but now that won't happen. If your members set this up, then it will actually properly say, Peter Thompson made this time entry, and that's what your customers would expect to see. So we're pretty excited about that. Now there will be a page, go in the top right corner, click under your member. There will be a page there for tossing in your explaining how to make these keys and how to give them to us. Yeah, Joel says member impersonation will be great. We have had to rely on ConnectWise for audit reviews. Yeah, so uh, yeah, it's going to clean up a number of things like that. So we're really pleased to offer that. Autotask, just a heads up, it seems like this hasn't been quite as much of a problem for our Autotask customers. However, it has come up a couple of times, and so we are going to be doing some investigation to see what we can do to do the equivalent behavior for auto tasks. So that's coming up. I'd like for us to do that this quarter already, so that in the next 6 weeks, sort of, we would like to do that investigation. If it's not too much work, could do it right away. Otherwise, schedule it for something that's coming up pretty soon. So just so you're aware of what's going on there. Now, the last thing I want to announce to you, kind of give you the heads up. This isn't like we're not announcing this to everybody, but hey, you come on this webinar, you get to know about the stuff that is still kind of in the pipeline. So we are going to be starting a what we're going to call the completed ticket challenge. Maybe we'll give it a different name, but that's kind of the working title right now. Basically, is for folks who you want some teaching and you want some community help to solve a specific problem if you haven't been able to solve it with Kanban yet. Basically, we're going to focus on reducing the number of your old tickets, cleaning up old tickets, and getting you a process where things are permanently under control, where you'd never again feel like you got 20, 30, 40, 50 tickets per engineer, because that's totally unmanageable. We want you to feel like you're under control. So we're going to spend 3 weeks giving you, 2 to 3 emails and videos each week. You're going to have a little bit of homework to do, but we're going to walk you through the exact steps. We're going to have a community discussion group. So yeah, we're excited to launch that. That's going to be happening soon. Text discussion kind of at your leisure, and then a community call each week. So you're going to be with the other people who are doing this challenge at the same time. We're going to track the key metrics. So we're actually going to watch, hey, you started out with this number of tickets. It's been a week. Now you got this number of tickets. So there's been an improvement, and track that. And we're going to be kind of doing a bit of a dress rehearsal, a dry run, before we really launch this in earnest for everybody starting in the new year. But we want to do this once with 5 customers for free. So we're going to be starting that in kind of end of this month already. So it's coming up early December, so that we can, the idea is that hopefully it's done by Christmas, and you can see those improvements. And as a dress rehearsal customer there, we would give that out for free, and then hope that you can provide some good feedback so we can really start this and help the community starting in the new year. So that's something that's coming up. Keep your eye open for that. We're excited about that. We really hope that helps a lot of MSPs really begin to be successful at taking control of their work. That's it. That's for the updates. Now we'll get to the question and answer. So you can use either the chat, or you can use the actual Q&A section of Zoom. It's got one from Joel. Member impersonation, will it clean up time entries in different time zones? No, we don't expect it to do that. I do recall that you had told us some challenges that you had with folks working in different time zones. But we don't expect it to make any changes for that. I guess I shouldn't say that for sure though, because I'm not super familiar with what the issue is that you were experiencing. But I guess I should say, to the extent that that issue has to do with the user's time zone, then maybe it would be fixed. So if it's just something that has to do with the server as a whole, then I wouldn't expect it to be fixed. But if it has to do something with a time zone setting on the actual user accounts, then indeed maybe it would. And so that's something that we can try right away. You just make sure that a couple of your different users in your different time zones are using that, and I guess we'll see, won't we? Chris. Appreciate you volunteering. See on the chat there, Chris Pickett is volunteering. He is a Kirchhoff Tech staff. Appreciate him drinking the Kool-Aid here, volunteering. Chris will probably have, well, actually, that is probably available on our instance already. Yeah, Chris is one of our guys. He's in a different time zone. He's out in Alberta, where we're all here in British Columbia. So he's 1 hour ahead of us, so he can try it out. And for your information, Chris, that should be live already actually on our server. Okay, well, give you another 30 seconds here, and I'll stick around. Otherwise, if there's no further questions, appreciate everybody attending. We are going to get the recording will be available by tomorrow, and you'll get an email when it's available on YouTube. By the way, you can we're posting more and more stuff to our YouTube channel, so go ahead, go over there and subscribe. We're going to have so far it's been mostly webinars and other recordings like that, but we are going to be making more and more content there on the YouTube channel, so you might want to subscribe. Okay, not seeing any more questions, so that'll be it. Thanks again for attending. Hope you have a great day, and let me know if you have any questions. My email is matt@topleft.team. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.